Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And it's the big one. The best film ever.
Oh, come on.
I've finally seen Casablanca.
Yes. So
I've never seen it before.
So we've just seen Casablanca, me for the umpteenth time, Mike for the first time. So I'm very curious to get all your thoughts on it.
I've seen bits and pieces of it before, but never all the way through, and I never really knew what happened because I thought I will watch it one day.
Uh-huh.
So even though there's that very famous ending, a beautiful friendship, and he's looking at you, kid, I had a sense of how things fit together, but never really knew. So it was a pleasure to actually see it.
Uh-huh.
And you know, for all the kind of pressure, I guess there is of like this is famously the greatest screenplay of all time. Everyone says, and one
Do
of the
people really say that?
people do say that.
Right,
That's
okay.
definitely a thing.
That surprises me.
And I mean, it's one of those screenplays that kind of in screenplay books and things kind of is held up as the absolute perfect.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it really is. And the film itself is obviously an absolute classic, and people adore it. And you kind of think, oh, God, you know, so films from the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, like sometimes they're said to be great, and you just don't get on with them. Who knows how it's going to go? And I really loved it.
Okay, great.
Oh, it's really good.
So
It's so romantic. Oh.
I think that's what people don't expect, that it is so romantic.
It is. It's so romantic, and the music is just luscious, and it just underscores everything so beautifully. Actually, what I think is really, really nice about it, really interesting in a way, is Rick is... I think one of the reasons that people might say this is one of the greatest screenplays is because it's so witty. Everyone has something witty to say at some point. There are some characters who are funny than others, but like people kind of... lines always have a couple of meanings, or there's something ironic to them, and particularly Rick's. And I think what's interesting about his character is that he's actually completely sincere, but he kind of operates through irony, you know, and it's because he's defending himself from his heartbreak. Where, like these days, if you tried to tell a similar sort of story, I think it would just be ironic. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's not. He's not fully open and sincere about anything. He's actually covering himself up and closing himself down. But the way that he does that tells you everything about him. And actually, he's kind of the character is not emotionally open, but the actor is. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, that's good way of putting it. Did you know that like they operated without a screenplay, right? The screenplay was never finished, and the actors actually didn't know what was happening or who would end up with whom.
Right. No, not really. No.
Yeah. So it was one of those like, you know,
seat of the pants.
There were, you know, pages written overnight, and you know, it started with an unfinished screenplay. Right, so... Well,
I was just reading a blog that includes a quote from Paul Henreid talking about taking on the role of Victor Laszlo, and it does say in there that like part of... He didn't want to do it originally because the screenplay was... he thought it was not very good, and then part of convincing him to do it was him ending up with Ilsa at the end.
Yes.
So clearly there is some... level of changes, whatever.
I remember reading Ingrid Bergman's autobiography, where she said, you know, until the last minute she didn't know, you know, and it was very difficult to act. And maybe actually that was good, because actually she couldn't act knowing who she was going to end up with. So you know, so maybe that worked to its advantage. Do you think that it's a great screenplay, or do you just think that it has great lines? It's not the same thing.
I agree it's not the same thing. And actually, I do think it's a great screenplay. And because I was paying attention to that, I was trying to think about it. I mean, I'm not like a great expert on screenplays or anything like that at all. But you do kind of pay attention to the way the story is written, I guess, and the way characters are used and their kind of arcs and things. And it occurs to me that... for one thing, the world of Casablanca feels unbelievably real, and it's down to the huge variety of characters who are in it. They're all kind of popping in and out of the bar, and you've got the police guy, and you've got the Nazis who are there, and you've got the guy across the road who runs the other bar who wants to buy it, and you've got Sam, and they all interact in bits and pieces, and some of them more than others. But every character, you feel like you understand them basically, even those who are fairly thin, such as the guy who runs the other bar. I forget his name.
Sydney Greenstreet.
Right. Well, his character is pretty thinly drawn.
Yes.
Nonetheless, you just get him.
Well, that's because the actors are so great.
Well, there's a bit of that, but I think it is in there.
No,
and then go on.
I don't think it's just a little bit of it. I mean, this has some of the greatest Hollywood bit players of all time, and actually not just bit players, stars in their own right. Like, you know, Sydney Greenstreet and Peter Lorre. You know, they would go on to star in films, and they had done so in the past. Obviously, Peter Lorre was M, right? There's a whole bunch of French actors. I forget what his name is, who was in La Règle de Jeu, who's in this. You know, there's the Russian actor who's in all those Lubitsch films. There's S.Z. Zakal, who's the waiter, who's like one of the delights of, you know, classic Hollywood film to see him. Yeah, he does like fantastic double takes, right? He's the one who's in the scene with What Watch? My Watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I do
Claude
think...
Rains.
And Claude Rains,
who I love,
who's fantastic, right? And again, who is a star in his own right, really. And Conrad Veidt, who plays the Nazi, right? So, I mean, it is one of the great supporting casts of all time, you know. And they do give flesh, I think, you know, to the characters, which is actually what even character actors are meant to do, right?
Yeah.
You know, so I think if they get some witty lines, which they do in this film, you know, and then the actor brings in his persona, you know, that's enough to help construct a world and a character and a set of attitudes. And, you know, so I think that's brilliant about the film.
But going back to whether it's a screenplay that's good or whether it's just a few lines, I think it's also that the development of the love triangle, and particularly what you learn about Rick, and kind of the timing of when you learn things, and like he's at his lowest moment, she comes back and he gets drunk, and then it goes into the extended flashback of what their relationship was and how it ended. And kind of it's beautifully put together and beautifully timed, so you get right at exactly the right moment, you know, sort of all this incredible heartbreak that's made him what he is, and then she walks in.
Yes,
you know,
I mean, and
you can't write that except you did.
Well, actually, I think Mike Curtiz, you know, wrote that with light, really, and you know, because I mean, I noticed this time, you know, she opens the door and there's a burst of light behind her.
Yeah.
You know, and she's, I mean, it's just beautifully staged, really. It's kind of like magic, you know. I mean, just the same way that afterwards at the end they go off into the fog. Well, they could have just gone off onto the plane, or no, they go into the fog.
And you should point out that we watched this on home media. You've got it on Blu-ray, and we just watched it on. So watched it on a nice big telly with a nice sort of sound system, or whatever. But it's not the cinema.
No,
but
it's not the cinema.
It's not the cinema. Nonetheless, I mean, it was great, and I mean, how to put it, like, on the one hand, I don't feel like I missed. Like, I feel like I was sucked into it. On the other hand, imagine how even greater it was.
I can tell you, like, you know, exactly. I'm so glad you liked it, you know, and I really wanted to see how you would respond to your first viewing of it. But I felt very much, because, you know, a lot of the pleasures of this film are, I was going to say tactile, though obviously that's ridiculous. But, you know, to watch Ingrid Bergman's face, half encased in shadows, with the pin spots in her eyes, you know, on a screen that's like 40 foot tall or something, on a really good print. Like, you know, to just feel like kind of, it's almost like you're in her face or in her mind. I mean, it's a very powerful thing to see this movie.
No one is shot that way anymore. No one's lit and shot that way anymore. And those beautiful close-ups that she gets.
Yes.
No one gets that anymore. And Celia, who we had on the First Reform podcast, has been telling me for ages to watch Casablanca, because it's one of her favourite films. So she thinks I'd really like it. And you know as well as I do how she's just in love with sort of 40s films, and she says that like that was when kind of cinema was at its most romantic, and I think she's kind of right, because no one is shot like this anymore, and you don't get that beautiful kind of, that just incredible openness.
There is something. I mean, I love 40s cinema also because of the way people speak, you know, because there's almost like a hushedness to the way of speaking.
Yeah.
You know, which
when people express their love for each other, it's like they're doing it in a secret.
Yeah, they speak softly, so you expect to hear it like in a big cinema and be surrounded by sound and by image, and also it does give it the quality of a dream, somehow, right? It's like kind of otherworldly voices, and of course in this film, I mean, it's some of the great voices in the history of cinema. I mean, not just Ingrid Bergman and Bogart, but also Paul Henry's voice.
Yeah.
And not to speak of, Conrad Veidt or Peter Lorre or Sidney Greenstreet. They really have like, you hear them and you instantly recognize who they are. So, to hear them speak in this way, I think it does create a mood, and I thought it was very powerful.
And I think the setting contributes to that as well. The idea of this kind of, it's in French occupied Morocco.
Yes.
And so they're away from the war, but they're nowhere near safety. It's this kind of purgatory that they're living in, and there's this talk of getting visas and doing favors for people that maybe you'll get an exit visa, but you're essentially trapped there until the war that's happening somewhere else might eventually stop. So it's just this dreamlike space that everyone's stuck in, moving around in and just constantly bumping into each other because there's nowhere else to go.
It's very dreamlike, and it's also actually oddly contemporary. Like, kind of watching this, you could imagine now, like, refugees from, I don't know, Yemen or whatever, like having similar kinds of experiences, trying to figure out how to get to a safe space, through visas. I mean, the sense of like people trafficking and so on. I mean, that's in a way what the film is about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of, what people have to do in order to kind of get away from danger zones. Though, of course, this is, I suppose, the well-to-do in the casinos of the world. This is like the dream adventure version, but it nonetheless has resonances of things, that kind of.
Well, it's also about, I mean, I was thinking about it in terms of like neutrality and complicity, and that sort of thing, because that's, I think, a huge element of the story, particularly a huge element of Rick's character arc. Really, is in re-engaging with the fight.
Yes,
because people talk about you ran guns to Ethiopia, you fought on the good side in Spain, and now you don't anymore. And he spends a lot of the film saying, "Why would I do a favor for anybody? Why would I stick my neck out?"
Yes.
And right at the start, when Peter Lorre is arrested, he just stands in front of him and lets him go.
Yes.
And that's what everyone's used to. And then his story is about re-engaging with the fight and becoming involved again until at the end he actually kills a Nazi.
Yes.
That's pretty hardcore. I mean, and the Marseillaise scene is where I think it turns around.
It still gets to me, like, I don't know, I must be like a Pavlov dog or something, because kind of every time that I watch that scene, and no matter how many times I've watched it, I still get all emotional.
I can understand it. And actually, one thing, it's such a powerful piece of music.
Yes.
That's one of the things. I mean, it's a brilliant, like, imagine if it was like the Top Cat theme or something, it wouldn't be the same. It's an incredible piece of music, and that's one of the reasons it's so rousing. But also, it's the setup of, the Germans are singing one thing, and then it's overtaken by the other, and the Germans have to sit down. Amazing. And it is
through song. It's like the battle of the bands.
It is like that's and it's like as time goes by, that's like, again, it's like the music kind of means so much and makes things happen. I think it's interesting in the Marseillaise scene. It's the nod from Rick. That's when he kind of turns.
Yes.
Because the band looks at him before they agree to play it. They look at him because it's like, we're not sure if we can.
That's him. That's the beginning. That's his declaration of whose side he's on.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
So that is an important turning point.
And the moment that he, and then they play the song, and then that's like, okay, the bar's got to get shut down now. So like complicity, neutrality has kept him safe and kept his business open for all this time, and now he takes a stand in it, and it can't survive. He's offended the Germans. So
the film has like some of the most memorable lines and endlessly quotable lines in the history of cinema. That's for sure. It has a great supporting cast. It does, or at least I find it moving. It is as you mentioned, is very, very romantic. What else did you...
I picked up on the character of Yvonne,
Ah, yes.
played by Madeleine Lebeau,
All right, okay.
who I just looked up. Who I find, she's not in it very much, but I think her character says an awful lot. So basically, she comes in. She's French,
Yes.
and the first time you see her is very early on in the film when you're establishing really who Rick is, and they've had this one night stand clearly and he's just I don't remember about it. He has some witty line about last night was already too long ago,
Yes.
and tonight I don't make plans that far ahead.
Yeah.
So we kind of sarcastically, rebuffs her, but clearly it meant a lot to her.
Yes.
Which actually kind of foretells in a way like what you're going to learn about Rick being left at the train station. That's like it meant so much to him, and
yes, he's
and
like
it's
closed off his heart.
Exactly,
Uh-huh.
and he got that letter that just said no. It's like 5 lines of a letter that just go no, it's not happening.
Yeah.
So and you know exactly how that would kill you. But that's what happens to her from him, and then she starts going out with a German, right? She comes in.
Well,
with a German
you're forgetting the Russian barman who says, "Yvonne, I love you, I love you, I love you." And actually, there is something going on there, right? But or I get the feeling that there is. But then she does go, back off with a German. So obviously, like, she's on the make.
Yeah, she comes into the bar with the German and orders an expensive round of drinks for herself, basically. And you kind of get the feeling that like she is sold out, I suppose is one way of putting it. Like and is enjoying the sort of riches that come with colluding in a way.
Collaborating is the word.
Sorry, yeah. And then I think the final time you see her, I think, is in the Marseillaise scene.
Yes.
And I think it's interesting that she gets close-ups in that scene.
Yes.
Where everyone else is just the shots of the crowd singing.
Yes.
And a shot of the Nazis kind of responding and sitting down. But she gets close-ups. And again, there's those beautifully lit sort of close-ups. And she's crying her eyes out singing it. She shouts, "Vive la France." And it's like that's her kind of rediscovering her patriotic pride, or do you know what I mean?
Her conscience, I would say. Actually.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think one of the things that I really love about the film is how unjudgmental it is. Right? People do what they need to do to survive. Really, yeah. And actually, the film has, it treats them all very endearingly, right? Kind of, it accepts their foibles, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it also kind of, I don't know if it draws a line but just because it accepts all these people's weaknesses and difficulties and the things that they have to do to get by, doesn't mean that there are no ethics or that there's no morality, yeah? And I think actually that's a moment where the film also kind of makes a stand, So she might have slept with whoever she needed to get, to sleep with to get by, and and the last one may have been a German or something. But actually, this is a moment where, like in French, they say "a prise de conscience," where she acts on her conscience.
Well, the film gives her the opportunity to make right.
Yeah. So it's both the character's thing, but it's also the film taking a stance on it, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
That it supports that character. Yeah. It's in sympathy with her.
And I just think like in those kind of 3 or 4 scenes in which she's involved, it's like the whole film in microcosm.
Yeah.
Certainly Rick's story in microcosm.
Yes.
And I think it's really elegant.
That is.
And really moving as well. When she cries,
yes.
It's really moving.
Well, it gets that scene always gets to me.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of Michael Curtiz films, and visually he's just extraordinary. And this is a further example of that, right? There are all these little things that I picked up on. So, for example, when he's having that conversation with Louis, the
Claude Rains character.
The Claude Rains character.
Renault.
And, he goes to get the money in the safe. And basically what you see is Bogart's shadow talking to Claude Rains. I mean, and that's just a way, it's like using a mirror or something. It's a way of creating off-screen space, right? The other one is when you're at the Blue Parrot And actually, in order for the filmmaker to tell you that you're at the Blue Parrot, again, he's using the shadow of the sign outside, but bringing it inside.
Yeah.
And then, you begin with a close-up of that, and then you move into the Blue Parrot itself. I mean, really kind of skilled, elegant. I mean, it's very light. It's not no big deal's made of it. But they're part of what adds to the texture of the film,
Yeah, it's like you could very easily establish that scene by having a shot of the sign, and then you cut and you're inside.
Yeah.
But just the thought that's gone into showing the shadow, and then and staying in the same shot as it moves up, is elegant.
It is.
And thoughtful, and
Yes, I loved all those little things, and I think, the other thing that is worth mentioning, I suppose, is Dooley Wilson, right? Because, in a way, it's kind of a very difficult character to play, right? He is, the black musician in the film. And actually, in films of this period, that could have been licensed to treat him very badly, right? Whereas actually the film is incredibly, I think, respectful of the character, yes? I mean, it's obviously still Bogart making a deal for him, right? Like, at the end when he gets 25% of the profits, yeah? So it's still kind of mediated through, a kind of a white patriarch, I suppose. But nonetheless, within the terms of the time, it's somebody who's like allowed their dignity. And then has this marvelous quality to his voice, I think, actually. It kind of, as soon as he begins to sing, it just kind of creates a mood just through tone. Not particularly through arrangement or anything, just the tone of his voice is kind of very conducive to what the film is trying to convey.
Yeah. I think what you say about him being shown kind of respect by the film is a really good point. I'm thinking particularly of the scene where Rick has met Ilsa again for the first time, and then it's that night and he's getting drunk on his own, and he tells Sam to go home, but he won't because he needs to look after Rick. And he's basically he's in a kind of petulant sort of tantrum almost. And he's kind of yelling at Sam and saying, if she can stand it, I can stand it. Play the damn song, and he is telling him what to do, and he is his boss. But still, it's like there's a certain degree of friendship almost, or maybe not quite friendship, but they've come together from Paris, and
yes, I would say friendship.
Yeah.
I mean,
and so like there's a relationship between them.
Yeah.
That I think So even though ultimately Sam does have to do what he's told because he gets paid by Rick, it's not not entirely uneven relationship between them. It feels like there's some nuance in there. I mean, he's the one actually, Sam, who like when Ilsa goes to the bar and she doesn't see Rick there, she sees Sam.
Yeah.
He's the one who kind of helps them, like not exactly establish contact, but he's the sort of he's the kind of key.
Well, he's the conduit through which you become aware of the problems involved, that there's feelings involved. And actually that's the point that I wanted to bring up, because I think the other thing that this film is remarkable and that you don't see very much, and actually now even less, is men suffering for love, I mean, it's true, isn't it, right? Like the whole beginning of the film, and particularly when she comes in, Bogart just evokes this sense of hurt, right? Of having loved, of being in pain, right? Because, he feels he was left, right? I mean, that's normally the terrain of like, a woman's melodrama, right? Like, somebody who's downtrodden has been made to suffer because a man was no good or he left or, and actually this is, in a way, the roles here are reversed, right? It's like, it does begin with Bogart, doing the suffering, right?
Yeah. It's a men's melodrama.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I can't think of a film. I mean, I think a lot of film noirs actually, in a way, later do that. But it's still very difficult to think about one which is so central. It really is just a man. Most of the film, it's a man suffering for love and having to put on a mask and keeping cynical and cool and distant as a way of kind of not showing what's inside, which only the Dooley Wilson character knows.
I was going to suggest Venom, but
yes.
maybe the only place it will be compared to Casablanca.
Okay, let me ask you a last thing for me, because part of the criticism is that this is one of the most entertaining films of all time, but actually that it's not a great film. That it has no depth, that it is all about good lines and kind of cynical attitudes, or attitudes that they're not real people, they're just kind of attitudes to a situation, and actually that they're not true or real, or have depth.
Well, of course
I'm
not.
asking.
No, I mean, who says that? That's just people trying to be contrary, because they say, well, everyone says this is the best film of all time, I'll sound interesting and say it's not. That's what it is.
That I actually do feel that, so I'm asking.
No, I think it's wonderful. I mean, I don't think there's a weakness in it. I really thought it's so hyped, and it's so sort of top 10 of everybody's list sort of thing, and that you think you're going to come to this and just go, oh God, why didn't I like it? But that's not the case at all. I don't think there's a weakness in it at all. I don't think that you can't criticise it for having not having. What do you say? People who aren't real.
Yes.
No. I mean, sure things are, and it's operating in kind of heightened melodrama at points where those extended scenes of Bogart and Bergman expressing their love to each other, and the music swelling in the background. That's exactly what you want. And yes. I don't, if you find it kind of fake or whatever, that's only because you don't see it anymore. Yeah, it's fine.
For me, it's a formative film in the sense that, when I was a teenager, a very young teenager actually, literally the first time I could go to films on my own. There used to be, quite a lot of repertory cinemas in Montreal, and actually during this period, this was a standard programming. You'd have Casablanca showing, once a month or whatever, and To Have and Have Not, and Woody Allen films would be part of it, and Bergman, and there was a repertoire and cult films, and but actually this was kind of like part of the repertoire of that repertory cinemas would show, and it was always packed, and it would always get an incredible reaction, and actually, the size of the screen and the venue and seeing it with people, because one of the things about this film is that it works so well, and as soon as the audience starts responding, is like it kind of creates a hum, or there's a collective conversation that happens with the film. It's like it does. It's one of those things, really. So it's one of those films that I saw over and over and over and over again, really. It's the kind of film that people kind of memorize, really.
Do you ever show it to students?
I'm doing so for the first time this year.
Oh, you never done it before?
I've never done it before, so that's kind of I was so interested in your response.
Under what sort of rubric are you?
I'm showing it as a series of Warner Brothers films directed by Michael Curtiz.
Okay.
So we're going to be talking about Michael Curtiz and genre, and Warner Brothers Studios in the classic period and classical cinema.
Right.
So it's also a way of introducing people to these stars, right? Like Henry and Ingrid Bergman and Bogart, which you're often surprised, but actually a lot of students have never seen a Bogart film.
I'd never seen a Bogart film. This is my first one.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh well, there you go.
I don't think I've seen another one.
Yes. So anyway, and also to introduce them to all these fantastic character actors, because, as we said, Sidney Greenstreet, Peter Lorre, Essed Zakal,
Claude Rains, the great Claude Rains.
Claude Rains. Well, Claude Rains I consider almost more a star, because I mean he was the Invisible Man and Mr. Skeffington. He had a lot of leading roles.
He's slumming it in this.
Well, he always played like, let's say, the first name under the title, or in exceptional cases, he'd get over the title. So he was like a star character actor, let's say, and actually, just a delight, So it's a way of kind of just bringing that into everybody, and I do think that what those actors bring is just brilliant. I mean, when that guy, the wallet picker, the pocket.
Oh yeah, the pickpocket.
The pickpocket. When he bumps into Azed Zakal, the waiter. Yeah. I mean, just the double takes that he does whilst he's checking his thing is a thing of beauty to watch, because it's like a set of little chuckles and a laugh just based on business, no dialogue. I mean, it takes great actors to do that.
Well, there's a wonderful emphasis on gesture throughout the film.
Yes.
Physical acting is enormously important. So so it may be the greatest screenplay of all time, but that doesn't have anything to say about how people act.
Yes.
And there's an awful lot of things done in kind of knocking the glasses over, and as you say, the kind of the business around the pickpocket, and just little movements that people have. When
Sidney Greenstreet swatting with the fly swat, well, he does that 3 times for emphasis.
The Rick nodding, becomes a huge deal. It signifies huge changes in his character, and that bit where in the scene where he remembers, and then he tells Sam to play as time goes by. He tries to stick it out, and the camera moves in on him, and he kind of goes ugh, and he just moves a little bit, and you feel all the pain inside him just ugh. And then he goes into the flashback, and that's all physicality, and that's all just gesture and physical acting. And it's beautiful, and I think that's what you might mean by tactile. That's there's an element of that in there.
Okay, good.
And so you can shove it up your ass when you say I never watched black and white films.
Anyway, we should do this as a regular feature of classics.
Films that I should have seen by now.
Well, it's lovely to see you engage with them. So yes, and besides, I'm sure our thousands of fans would like to know our views on films that they're likely to see.
Well, there's definitely a sector of our audience that will listen to this podcast and none of the others.
Yes, yes, and respond to it really. So I think we should.
I hope I haven't let them down.
We need to make this a regular feature.
So I'll draw up a list of films that I haven't seen yet that make me ashamed.
Actually, we could ask whoever listens to us, if there's any of those classic films that they'd like us to cover. Actually,
yeah.
So
email the canon.
Yes, kind of offer suggestions if you want kind of to eavesdrop on Mike and I talking about a classic film. Offer us a list of which ones you'd like us to discuss.
Yeah, because they're available.
They are, and one of the great joys of watching film is actually seeing, what is available, and kind of it's a joy to watch and to discuss them.
Yeah.
So
if you want to email us, the email address is eavesdroppingatthemovies@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter as well, at eavesdropmovies. You can listen to the podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. And our blog is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.